In today's episode, we're going to talk about getting out of debt and financial tips. And today I'm joined with Deacon Hayes, who him and his wife paid off over $52,000 in debt in 18 months. So Deacon, first off, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This is awesome.
So before we get started, tell me a little bit about your story because you do have an interesting story, and it's to a lot of people, debt is this insurmountable obstacle, but you were able to overcome it. So tell me a little bit about your story.
Sure. When my wife and I got married, we were in our mid 20s, and we decided the first thing we wanted to do was combine our finances, right? We wanted to see like what are we working with here, And so we took her debt and my debt and put it on paper and said, "Oh my gosh, like between the two of us, we have $52,000 in debt." And I thought that was a lot of money, but I look at all these different things that people buy when they get out of college. They finance a car, they go out and buy a boat, or these type of things. But anyways, for us, 52 grand was a lot of debt. So we said we got to put together a plan to tackle this because if we continue down this path, we'll have hundreds of thousands of dollars in consumer debt, and that's not even including our mortgage, right? So we put together a plan, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of those details, but we were able to pay it off in 18 months. And that's what really fueled the fire for me to quit the corporate world and work for myself was how could I take this experience and help other people, get out of debt, achieve their financial goals, and make a living at it, right? So that whole story is what launched, Well Kept Wallet, which is my company today, and it's been a fun ride.
That's awesome. So let's get into the nitty gritty. I get a lot of people that tell me, oh, I really want to travel and I really want to quit my job and do all this stuff, but I'm in a ton of debt. And this isn't something I personally have a lot of experience with. So my first thought is you probably need to get out of that debt, but I don't really know how. So if someone is, let's say, in $25,000, $50,000 in debt, what are your recommendations for getting out of debt?
So there's two different methods that are prominent, right? And so I'll just kind of go over the one that we didn't use, and then I'll go over the one that we use, so people have an idea. So the debt avalanche is where most people, from a mathematical standpoint, say I'm going to list my debts from highest interest rate to lowest interest rate because they want to get rid of that high interest rate first, right? And that's not the way we use. We use what's called a debt snowball, which is where you list your debts smallest to largest by amount, not by interest rate. And the reason why that difference is so key is you can get some real fast victories by listing your debt smallest to largest, where psychologically you feel like, man, I'm making progress. Like this is working, and it just gets you going to where that momentum is built, and you just start selling stuff and getting extra jobs, and you do whatever it takes to pay off that debt. Sometimes with the highest interest rate, it could take you years to pay off one, card. And so you lose momentum, you lose that fervor. And so it's just not as effective. And so really what I recommend for people, whether they have 25 or 50 thousand in debt is, use the debt snowball method. I've got a free form on my site called the debt elimination form where people can list their debt smallest to largest and automatically calculate for them. It even says how many months it will take them to get debt free, right? So I want to make it as simple as possible to really make it attainable for, like, if you're in debt in your 20s, you can pay it off, and that's how.
That's awesome. All right, so after you've made the debt snowball, or let's say potentially the debt avalanche, what's the next step? How do you actually go about paying down this debt?
So there's two sides to the equation. It sounds kind of simple, right? It's you increase your income, you decrease your expenses. But the reality is once we really were focused, right? We were hyper focused on how do we get out of debt. We went through our budget line by line and said, how can I make that smaller, right? So we looked at our cable bill and we're like paying $80 a month. We said, hey, we don't really need cable, right? So we got rid of that, and we just had regular TV for a while and watched, Redbox or whatever it was at that time. And then we went through, canceled my wife's gym membership, stopped eating out as much. I think we maybe ate out once a week, or maybe not even that. So we really kind of cut back on every single line item on our budget, which actually freed up hundreds, if not thousands of dollars each month. Because, I mean, it's amazing how much it all adds up, right? We reduced our cell phone bill. We got rid of our cable. I even sold a car that was upside down. It was a brand new car, and that was $17,000 of the debt, right? I thought, hey, if I could have that $400 from that car payment to put towards my debt, that'd be much better than me just spending the next 4 years trying to pay this thing off, right? I mean, we were able to get out of debt in 18 months. So, really, it's those two parts of the equation is reducing your expenses and then increasing your income. I decided we're going to sell everything we don't need. My wife had some designer clothes that she didn't wear anymore. I had some electronics, like old cell phones and things like that. So it's just like looking around the house and saying, what don't we need? What's just sitting here collecting dust? How can we turn that into cash? And then on top of that, I got a part-time job delivering pizzas because it's a very flexible job, work a couple days a week and make 15, 20 bucks an hour. So, those are the two parts of the equation that really help people pay their debt down even faster.
Did you go into this planning on spending 18 months exactly to pay off your debt, or was it one of those things that you kind of just as you could pay it off, you did, and eventually it added up to the 18 months?
No, so I set that goal from the onset because it was one of those things that I wanted to set a deadline and then work backwards, right? We got 52 grand in debt, and I want to get out of it in 18 months because I had heard that there's people that pay off their debt within 18 to 24 months. So I'm like, well, if they can do it in 18, I can do it in 18. And so, we put together a plan and worked backwards and said, okay, let's sell the car that gets rid of 17 grand. Hey, when we get a tax return, we take that money, all that money goes to pay off debt, right? So our focus was just clearly on in that 18 months paying off that debt and achieving that financial goal.
And you help a lot of people to overcome their debt. What are some of the most common things that you see that people are making mistakes with when trying to pay it off?
Well, so one of the things is I think that they're trying to attack too many debts at once, right?
Mm.
So they'll say, hey, I'm doubling my car payment, or I'm paying an extra $100 a month on my student loan, and it's kind of an arbitrary plan, right? Like they're making some progress, but maybe not the most progress.
Mhm.
And so really, that's why I love the Debt Snowball because it's focused intensity on paying off one debt at a time, and that really is the key over paying all these other extra payments, right? You just get so much more progress so much more quickly. And that's one of the key things I see people doing. It's just not having that focus. The other thing is not having a budget. And I know it sounds, I mean, if someone's listening to this, they're in their 20s, they're like, budget, that just sounds lame, right? Like it actually is freedom. For us, it's knowing that if we stay within these guidelines, we're going to achieve our goals. We like to travel internationally, so we'll have the money to do that. We have a kid, so we have the money to afford to take care of our kid, put them through daycare. Like we have the money we're planning on and being financially independent, meaning that we could retire in 8 years. Because we have a budget, right? So the budget isn't lame. It's really something that gives us peace of mind that we're going to be able to achieve our goals in life.
So let's talk about the budget a little bit. How is it actually set up? I mean, I assume after every meal you're not tallying up saying like, oh, I only have $400 a month to spend on food or whatever number. How do you set it up so it's easy to manage?
So, we've kind of progressed over the years. We started with just an Excel spreadsheet, and I think that's where everybody should start, right? Because it's kind of that first coat of paint. But then we kind of integrated using a website called mint.com. And what that does is it just pulls in bank account information, credit card information from all your different accounts into one place and automatically categorizes them to the best of its ability. So now what we do is kind of combine that with our spreadsheet and we just let Mint categorize everything. We got to fine tune it a little bit, but not too much. And then we just literally take those totals from groceries and Mint and then we put it in the spreadsheet, right? Just so we can see it the way that we've always seen it and make sure that we're on track.
So when you were first trying to pay off your debt, were you avoiding any kind of like the lattes and drinks out with friends, or did you include that into your budget plan?
So we were more cognizant of that, right? Like we would go out and instead of ordering drinks, because drinks can be expensive, you get like 2 or 3 beers and that's 15, 20 bucks, right? So, I'd probably get waters if I'm going out, during that time frame. Doesn't mean that I completely like sacrifice, but I was very cognizant knowing, hey, every decision that I make, every purchasing decision that I make will affect our ability to get out of debt or not. And so really it wasn't a sacrifice because it was like that was our greater why, right? The reason why I would drink water instead of beer was because we wanted to get out of debt. And so and for some people it could be coffee, right? Like I know that going to Starbucks could be $4 to $10 a shot, and that adds up over time. So really, for each person, it's just you got to figure out what are you willing to give up so that you can achieve that greater goal. But also budget in fun, right? Like we didn't live like hermits. We definitely did enjoy life and we enjoyed the process. But we were cognizant of every purchase we made.
That is one of the things I hear a lot about when people are talking about budgeting. They're like, oh, don't have that latte every day. Instead, you'll have $1 million when you're 70 years old. And a lot of the criticism I hear around it is, I'd rather have the latte every day. It makes me feel better than $1 million when I'm 70. Do you find a middle ground between the two, or how do you go about doing it?
Well, I do. So, for me, I love Keurig K cups, right? And the reality is those are still pretty pricey. So, but I can get Starbucks coffee. I get the Pike's Place, coffee beans. I grind them myself, and I have a refillable K cup. And instead of paying $2 for a cup of coffee, I pay less than 10 cents, but I
Hmm.
have the same exact coffee. So great, you love that. You love Starbucks coffee. There's a solution for you. Pay 10 cents instead of, $4. So really, just finding ways to still have what you want and enjoy it, but just do it in a creative way where you're spending less money on it.
100% agree. I mean, there's been so many times where all my friends are going out to lunch, and especially at like a workplace or something, and I end up just bringing my lunch. I have better quality food, healthier, and it cost me probably about a third the price, like all the same experiences. And they kind of, at first, everyone was making fun of me. They're like, "Oh, you're bringing your lunch." And after a while, everybody starts to do the same thing because they realize, "Oh, you're saving $7 every day." Like, that's kind of cool.
That's really cool. And that's another, it's just one of those things that people don't recognize of how much that eats away at your budget, right? I mean, like let's just say it was $10 a day and you're talking about 20 work days a month, that's $200 right there.
Hmm.
And so, kind of to your point, and I know people will probably beat this to the ground, but if you put $200 away for 45 years at 10%, that's over $1 million, right?
Hmm.
So just that one decision, understanding that opportunity cost, you're understanding that, and I think more people that do that, they're going to have more money to do what they want in life just by making those small little switches.
Yep. Same thing. Same thing with drinks. A lot of times find it's better just to pregame with my friends, have a few shots of alcohol, and when you get there, it's like you don't have to worry about, oh, I gotta buy $7 beers all night long just so I can eventually get a buzz. But that's just one of my examples.
Yeah, it's a great example, and I think definitely for people in their 20s, totally relevant.
So I want to talk a little bit about your website, but before we do, is there any other tips about dealing with debt or budgeting that you really want to hit hard?
So, I think it's important to have that why, right? Because especially when you're in your 20s, you're still trying to figure out life. And I think the why behind what you're doing, right? And so it could be that you want to be financially independent, right? You're looking at people and saying, oh my gosh, I want to do this differently. I don't want to wait till I'm 65 to have enough resources to retire. Like, I'd love to be able to be financially independent, retire early. It could be you want to be able to buy a house, right? So you need to come up with $20,000, down payment. It's hard to do that when you have a lot of debt hanging over your shoulders, right? So really, I think for people that are looking to get out of debt, understand the why behind it, and then that will be your motivation, your driving factor. And sometimes I've seen people put it on their fridge, right? Like they'll have a picture of a house, or maybe a picture of like a couple on a beach or something like that, where it's just like that's their motivation. And so, really encourage people to understand what their why is.
I like it. Yeah, it's true. There's a whole TED talk all about you got to understand the why, and that's one thing that Apple does very differently. Differently is they come with the why as opposed to regular PCs are like, this is what we have. Like, look how great it is. This is how it's going to help you. But people really connect deeply emotional with the why. So I love that piece of advice. Another question for you is you talked earlier about creating side income, and that's something I know you've done through your website. So tell me a little bit about how did you get started doing the financial blog, and how has that kind of over time helped you create some extra income?
Sure. When we were getting out of debt, I actually sold wood floors. And it was not the most glorious job, right? And part of it, it was also during the recession. So, my job was directly tied to real estate, and so it was one of those things where, I was working long hours, not making as much money as I had anticipated in a sales type job like that. It was 100% commission. And so I decided I wanted to create a financial blog as kind of an outlet to just say, hey, this is what we're doing to trim our expenses. This is what we're doing to get out of debt. And, I didn't know anything about blogging. I'm not really a writer so much, but I just thought, hey, I want to be able to share this experience with other people. And through the process, I started to get, traffic from Google and social media and, people asking me questions about, their specific situation. And so I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, how could I turn this into a business? And so started coming across, some people that were making money in the online space and kind of looking at what they're doing right and then just imitating them, right? So, for instance, Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income was a great influence. I looked at him and, he said, he had basically a product initially that he offered, which was a PDF, and it solved a specific need. And he sold it for, let's say, $30, and he made $8,000 his first month. And I'm like, wow, that's great. So I need to create a product. So I created a class called Debt Free in 18 Months. And then I started seeing that he had affiliate income. And so for people listening, affiliate income is you have a relationship with some sort of product or service, and they'll pay you a commission if you refer them. And so I thought, okay, let me find products and services that line up with my brand that I believe in, that I don't feel like I'm selling my soul for, and then have an affiliate relationship with them. And then every time someone signs up for it, I get a small commission. And so really that was a great source of side income while I was doing, actually, when I became a financial planner eventually. So I had a full-time job in the corporate world as a financial planner, and so I was making income on the side to a point where, in 3 days I made $1,500, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, like I would probably be much better off focusing my time and effort on building up this site than being a financial planner, and totally shifted gears and so started working on the website and never looked back.
Awesome. And I want to kind of also talk about, so a lot of guests I have on are digital nomads or they're interested in making money online. But something in your story that really struck me as interesting is you said when you were paying off your debt, you actually were delivering pizzas. Other than delivering pizzas, what are some other jobs that are not internet based that you'd recommend people who are really, really stuck trying to pay off debt get as part-time jobs?
It's interesting, and I don't even know if I necessarily say part-time jobs or as more using your skill sets to make money. So I'll give you an example. My buddy Chris Peach, he cleaned pools. He had a truck. He had a pool skimmer, and he on the weekends and on certain days he would go and clean pools. He was a firefighter, so he had some more flexibility. Other people, landscaping, right? Like just saying, hey, you know what? Go around your neighborhood, make an extra few $100 a week, just going and mowing people's lawn, doing stuff that's flexible, right? I mean, because I think that the tough thing is you're not looking for another long-term job, right? This is a temporary solution, to make some extra side income until you achieve a goal. So, there are some jobs that you could do, like serving. Some people do that, and I always recommend going to like more of a medium to high-end place because low-end places you're just not going to get the tips to really make it worth it. Delivering papers, right? Like you can do that before you go to work in the morning. I've heard of plenty of people doing that. So there's definitely plenty of jobs, but I definitely like the idea of taking your skills and making money at that first. And if you can't do that, then look for one of these type of jobs.
I love it. So I want to wrap up here and ask you a more general question, and this is geared at people in their 20s. Do you have any general advice that you wish you would have known when you were in your 20s for all the listeners?
So here's what I wish I would have known is that for anybody who lives in America, it is totally possible to become financially independent within 15 years. And so what I mean by that is if you're willing to say, when you're a college student, I remember when I was in college, like I was paying $250 a month for rent because I was sharing a room with some people. My groceries were probably a couple $100. My cell phone at the time was probably $100 because back in the day, cell phones were more pricey. But I probably lived on less than $1,200 a month, right? And what happens is over time, you get that lifestyle creep, right? Where, okay, all of a sudden you get out of college, you're like, I want to buy a brand new car. And now you got a $500 payment, and now I need to buy a house, and now you got a $1,300 mortgage payment or $2,000 or whatever it is, and now you have no money to work with to become financially independent or to achieve your financial goals. So my thing is stop right now and say, what do you want out of life, right? If you want to be able to travel, if you want to be able to enjoy life, if you want the freedom of being financially independent, it's possible. You just got to map out a plan and do it, right? And so the best example that I would say is a buddy of mine. His name is, well, I won't just say his name because he doesn't want to tell a story yet, but he's 31 years old. He and his wife have 3 kids. They have a paid-for house in Scottsdale, which is one of the nicest parts of Arizona. So they have no debt whatsoever, and they've got a few $100,000 saved up in the bank. And he just told me, just got a message from him today that he's quitting his job at his normal corporate job to work at a nonprofit just part-time. because he has the flexibility at 31 to do that, and he's going to pursue side ventures, right? Stuff that he actually loves and enjoys. So really, if you're listening to this, stop, figure out what you want in life, and then map a plan to get it, and it's totally possible.
I love that piece of advice. So, Deacon, where can people find out more about you and your work?
The best place to go is wellkeptwallet.com. And for any of the forms that I mentioned that are free, they can go to the resources page on my website.
Cool. And I'll put links in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. And if you did, make sure you hit the big red subscribe button down below. You can also check me out on Facebook and on Twitter. And I release a new video every Monday. And by hitting that subscribe button, you'll get those new videos every Monday. And this is really a podcast. It's also a website. You can check out the website. It's howtodoyour20s.com. I'll put a link right over here as well. And what it's all about is trying to improve your life. And we specifically focus on things that people in their 20s are interested in. So make sure you like the video if you liked it. Subscribe. Like us on Facebook and Twitter, whatever. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again on another video.